Hi, and welcome to another episode of MOE Conversations. I am Dr. Nyan Gadsby-Dolly, your Minister of Education of Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm happy to join you as we discuss issues in education and issues that affect all of us. COVID-19 has been very disruptive to our education system, and the question is for our students who have endured this tumultuous situation, how do they adapt and position themselves for this uncertain future? Education in this uncertain future is something we want our students to be prepared for. And so I have joining me today to discuss this adapting and positioning for an uncertain future, Mr. Delison Charles, who is an educator, mentor, behavioral therapist, and holistic wellness coach, and Mr. Kuswa Dardane Edwards, an author, social entrepreneur, and gender entrepreneurship specialist. We go to Delison first, and Delison, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Minister. How are you?
I'm well, and Delison is joining us via Zoom, a part of our very new, I don't want to say new normal, just the normal as it is now. We're going into 3 years of this pandemic. So Delison, tell us, your bio cites that you work with people to help them discover and live out their purpose. What does that mean, and how did you get into this particular career field?
Well, first and foremost, living out your purpose, for me, it is directly connected to my faith. You know, I am a Seventh-day Adventist. I was led to share this here. And as a Seventh-day Adventist, I just believe that, as a Christian, I believe that we were all created with purpose, imbued with purpose from the time we were brought into this world. For me, you know, it has taken on a very personal note because for the last 16 years, I would say 16 of the past 18 years, you know, my career was heavily based in aviation. And I had occupied different levels in aviation. And I had what I would have considered to be a traditional job, a secure job. When the pandemic came, you know, it really put some pressure on the aviation industry. And I was faced with some very hard decisions where, you know, I was told you can stay on and really try to weather this storm, or you can, you know, take a leap of faith. And I decided to take the leap of faith. And for some people, it was really strange because they were like, why would you leave traditional secure employment to go into what people consider to be unemployment? And I said, for me, rather, it's a transition from a traditional workspace into a world of opportunity. And I say that if the last 2 years of my life could be given a chapter, like, you know, a heading for a chapter, I would call it pivoting in a pandemic. And I think that, you know, the last 2 years for me has been so revealing, so enlightening, you know, and I have really been blessed with several opportunities to come on platforms and to go and create safe spaces where I can help people find that thing that they were created to do. I tell them, I said, this world has problems and this world needs solutions. And every one of us was placed into this world to solve a particular problem. So I want to help people find what they need to do and what that contribution is that they need to make to this world.
Great. So this world is faced with problems. And I think that's one of the things that our students are faced with at this time. They have been completely taken out of their comfort zones, and everything is different about how they have to live, adapt, and most importantly, learn and find their sense of purpose. So in the past 2 years, in your interactions with persons, have you come across students who have been looking for that purpose, students who have been thrown off by this COVID pandemic and they need to find their purpose and be able to center themselves around their studies? And if you've met that, what have been some of your solutions and how have you helped them to be able to find their purpose once again?
Definitely. Well, I've been teaching foreign languages for the last decade. And so over the last 2 years, I started my Delhi Digest language lab. And so getting students at different levels from Form 1 all the way up to preparing to do the CAPE exams, I was blessed with the opportunity to really speak to students, one from an educational standpoint, but then having my coaching and counseling background, I was able to tap into some of the deeper needs and some of the things that were at play. And I discovered that many of our youth today have been struggling with self-esteem issues or self-doubt. And on the other side, there's a lot of unaddressed trauma. I would speak to the self-esteem issues first. What I've come to realize is that the adolescent mind, I mean the adult mind as well, but the adolescent mind in particular is bombarded by this thing we call social media, and the level of suggestibility is very high. So we have youths who are being raised by devices or raised on a diet of devices, and they are fed with all of these suggestions on the pages, on the explore pages and the feed and the timeline. And they have so many images against which to compare themselves. And we have a lot of young people who are not very sure about who they are still. And so when they're not sure, because they're not sure about who they are, and because they're being fed with all of these images and suggestions of who they should be, you have a lot of young people aspiring to be like people that they don't even understand why they want to be that way. And so the focus is being placed on trying to fit in and trying to be like, as opposed to trying to accomplish and trying to become. And I always say to my students, I said, why would you want to be someone else in this world? Then it means that we'll have two of them and none of you. And there's only one of you in this world. So you would really want to spend some time to determine who you are and how you should show up in this world. And the other thing that I've come to see happening with a lot of students and young people by extension is a lot of unaddressed trauma. You know, in the Caribbean, we have a very a unique demographic and dynamic, so to speak. And with our sociology, we have a lot of childhood abandonment and neglect and so on. And a lot of our parents, especially in single parent homes, we have had a lot of children coming up in homes where it was full on survival mode. And when you have survival mode operating in a home, very often that household is forced or challenged sometimes to make compromises that they don't want to make. And sometimes you recognize that parents trying to make ends meet and trying to just let their kids get the best that they can, sometimes compromise on the emotional engagement, sometimes compromise on giving their children attention. And you recognize that because all of the energies are being forced or being channeled into making this house survive and stay afloat, and some children not feeling like they're being really seen as a person, as a human. You have them now going outside of the home, back to the same social media platforms, back to the same, circle of friends or associates on the outside, seeking this attention and validation. And that is what really clouds or takes up most of their attention. So you would have people saying, why are you not focusing on your studies? But then I tell them, if you were to just humanize the students a bit, humanize the adolescents, and really take that time to create some safety for them to find out what exactly is going on, what exactly is happening with you, in you, and around you, then we kind of get a clearer understanding as to why they may not be seeming to prioritize their studies as we would want them to.
Okay, that's really interesting, because sometimes I agree with you. As parents, we are so, taken up by providing some things for our children, and some of the tangible things, we don't feel as though we are, leaving out anything if maybe we don't give them as much attention as maybe they may need, and so on. And we feel as though those things are important. It's important to put food on the table. It's important to go to work. But maybe not classes as so important to sit down and have an hour of talk with your child, and these things are the reality for parents, especially when we are ourselves faced with tumultuous situations. So, Akosua, you've written 4 books. And in those books, your recurring theme is self-discovery, self-care, finding out who you are. And when we translate this to the student perspective, and we relate what Delison would have said in terms of students being able to find themselves, find their purpose, and that being an aid to them really prioritizing their studies and their potential, what has been your experience in terms of students and their ability to have that self-discovery, especially in this time of the COVID pandemic?
I think with being in these times, students, just as Delison spoke about, they look for something outside of themselves to make them feel special, to make them feel that it's a way of coping. And what has to happen is we have to, as parents, as educators, as support system, to really look at coming out of the survival mode and focus on encouraging the students to know who you are, to know that you are born with this resilience. You are born to survive, more than just survive, but you're born to thrive. And so if you are in a situation that has a support system that can say, listen, these are changing times, but within you, you have that ability to deal with it. You have the ability to thrive more than just survive. Then that would be the foundation for you knowing who you are and moving away from just reacting to what's around you. You recognize that I have this thing in me, this unique thing in me, that I can transcend the situation if I know who I am. And knowing who you are starts with recognizing that you are unique, recognizing that you have that within you to transcend the situation. I think a lot of students, they look for validation, they look for praise, and they look for a pat on the back. And if they don't get it within their circle, they go outside for it. And of course, that's where the social media and the gangs and the circle of friends come in. But if you have that situation, if you have the opportunity and you have the support system around you, that level of looking for something outside of yourself will go down.
So what are some of the things that we as parents can encourage our children to do to aid in that self-discovery? Because, you know, just on the face of it, we may say, but of course our children know who they are. But then when circumstances arise and children who we may feel were well balanced, you know, we see certain behaviors and we realize that there's a problem, you know, what are some of the things that we can encourage? What are some of the things that encourage self-discovery? What are some of the things that encourage introspection so that we can say, you know, or as parents say to our children, you know, let's spend some time doing this and guide them along that road to self-discovery?
I think one of the key things is being a demonstration to our children and a demonstration of balance. If we are working all the time, then we show that to our children that working all the time is what would get you ahead.
Starting to feel targeted.
No, definitely not, Minister. I know you have your downtime, I know that for sure. So demonstrating to your kids that balance is important. So working alone is not the way to self-discovery. Rest, and rest doesn't only mean sleeping. Being still, being able to put down the devices, even when you are doing it for fun, for leisure. Have some time where you just spend with yourself and feel all of the feelings that come with it. Because what this time has really shown us is we can't really escape anymore. We can't go to the bar, we can't go to shopping. Well, we could now. But initially, those things were kind of taken away from us. So as parents, as support system, we have to demonstrate to our children that work alone will not show you who you are. You have to rest, you have to validate your feelings, spend some time in nature, if that's what you like. If you're a religious person, you pray, you meditate, you find the things that bring you joy and don't feel ashamed for it, because all of us are unique and we have something in us that we would do for free. We would do, forever if given the chance. So as parents, we have to bring that out and not just say, do your work, do your work, do your work. What work are you doing? And only praise them for getting good grades, because we need well-rounded citizens, and it's not just academics that would bring a well-rounded citizen. So rest, release, have something that brings you joy, you know, sing.
So we need to encourage that in our
Yeah,
children.
we need to encourage all aspects of them to come out.
You know, that's really interesting because, you know, traditionally our society has really focused on academic success. And as Delison said, you know, the traditional work environment, you have a good job, you know, and you're doing well in school. And that's been a measure of success.
Yeah.
But as you said, what this pandemic has shown us is that when those things are pulled away and stripped away, what is left?
Yeah.
And I guess even for the adults, you know, that has been something startling to deal with. What's left? Who
Yeah.
am I
Without the
outside of
things.
all of these things? And, you know, Delison, you gave your experience of a whole career change, which is something that a lot of adults have struggled with. And sometimes we don't even recognize that our children are there struggling along with us because their lives would have changed as well. Of course, so I know you're big into journaling, and one of your books is a journal where you encourage introspection, encourage people to look inside. Could you give us a little more insight about how that can work for students?
Yeah, I think for me, what really stood out and what helped me is when you write something down, you take it out of your head, you put it on a journal, it's a non-judgmental piece of paper. It can't tell you, you know, this is nonsense or what are you doing? So you're able to now take it out of your head, which clears more space within your brain, and put it on paper. And you're able to now ask yourself on the paper some difficult questions that you may not ask anyone. And when you write, you release that from inside of you. Sometimes you could write something on there that's bothering you and burn it, so that when the thought comes up in your head, or sometimes it comes up in my head, I would say, didn't I burn you in a fire?
Okay.
What are you doing?
Okay.
So journaling is really a tool that helps you to dump your brain onto a non-judgmental piece of paper, and it kind of guides you to being self-aware and asking yourself some difficult questions, or maybe some questions that you don't feel comfortable to ask others.
Okay.
And I think it's a tool that could work for students because sometimes they don't feel comfortable in speaking out with what's in their brain. And then gives them a guide then to, when they are ready to ask the question, they formulate it in a journal.
Okay.
So it guides them towards that as well.
All right. So Delison, of course, is big on journaling as a way of self-discovery, as a way of, you know, creating this safe space for a mind dump and allowing maybe students to come face to face with some things that might be in their mind, but they don't even want to acknowledge because it might be scary. It might be difficult to come to terms with. Do you also advocate journaling, or is there some other tool, simple tool, that you can suggest to our students as a way of discovering yourself, as a way of refocusing yourself, as a way of coming to terms with some of the things that may be bothering them that they feel, you know, they can't say to anybody else?
Yeah, I'm an advocate of journaling as well. I do it personally, and it's something that in my sessions with my clients, you know, I recommend it to them as a tool. Some of them like it, some of them don't like it, and I think it's because of just not wanting to deal with that mind up, the intensity of the mind up. So what I do is that I have a 3 question technique that I challenge people with, and I said it's the what, the why, and the how, right? And I tell people whenever you find yourself in a triggering situation or you find yourself in an overwhelming situation, this applies for both adult, adolescent, and even for children, right? When you're in an overwhelming situation, the first thing to identify is the what. And you ask yourself, what is bothering me? What is overwhelming me? What is making me feel unsettled in this moment? And then after you identify the what, you ask yourself, why? Why am I feeling this way? What, you know, why am I being triggered in this way? And in that, you're trying to identify what is exactly at play and what is in your mind. So you're trying to isolate these negative beliefs or negative thoughts and pull them out so you can examine, you know, what's really in that. And then after you determine what is the truth from what is, the falsehood, then you ask yourself, how am I going to respond, or how am I going to act based on now, finding this information out. The biggest question I ask people is, I like to challenge people. I say, where's the proof? Because sometimes, we can rehearse negative thoughts and beliefs about ourselves, things that we don't even understand were implanted in us either from our childhood or from our adolescence or from our loved ones or caregivers, even our parents sometimes implant negative things in our minds, and we use those as rules. So I like to challenge people. I ask them, I said, where's the proof of that? And sometimes you recognize that people stop in their tracks because they're like, oh my gosh, I have been repeating this and believing this for so long, but there's really no proof of it. And it's something that I can slowly and gradually just release so they can experience the freedom. Where is the proof? That's the question. Where is the proof?
Wow. So there's, as a simple tool, there's journaling. There's the what, why,
how,
and how.
how.
So these are simple things that we can do, and because we raise the point of demonstrating, and our children learn a lot by example. And sometimes we as parents feel so tense, and educators, we feel so tense, and we expect our children to feel very normal about everything, but we are tense about it, and we are showing them exactly how to behave, and when they it plays out. Sometimes you're surprised, why are you stressed? And even though you as a parent or as a teacher, is saying, oh my God, are we going to finish this syllabus? Are we going to be able to, write these exams? And then, it passes on to us. So it's something that we have to, that's great advice. And I'm taking it personally as well. I've been trying to journal for a while, and maybe there's some things that I don't want to face as well, and it's something that we have to consider the effect, on our mind. So we are speaking, this is MOE Conversations, we're speaking about adapting and positioning for an uncertain future. And the uncertainty of our future is real. At this point in time, we have been discussing with stakeholders whether we start school in February. It's something that's uncertain because our health circumstances are uncertain. Everything is so fluid. And that, of course, presents a difficulty. So, students are wondering, will I go back to school? Students are wondering, will I have to stay online? Will I see my friends? Educators are wondering, would I have my students in front of me? Would I have all of them, half of them? How is this going to work out? We're going to start school, and what's going to be the health situation? Are we going to have to stop school for COVID? So the uncertainty of the education future is clear. And, we all have to adapt. We all have to position ourselves, whether we are parents, students, teachers, administrators, whether we're the principals of the schools. We all have to adapt because we don't know tomorrow if we will have, persons on quarantine who will be there to fulfill the task. So it's really very uncertain, and therefore teaching and learning in this environment is a critical thing to discuss, because if students are not well prepared, if teachers are not well prepared, then all of that impacts the teaching and learning ecosystem. And so that's the importance of this discussion. And as we speak, we are going into the third year of a pandemic. And, it could be very demotivating to our teachers and students. And sometimes when you make these New Year's resolutions and you say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to, make these adjustments, and the uncertainty can demotivate you. So I want to ask both Akosua and Delison to tell us, what are some of the things we can do when you're just completely demotivated as a student? You just don't want to deal with the whole situation. You're just tired of having to deal with this. What are some of the tools and tricks you can tell us that maybe our students can do to pick up themselves and have that motivation and position themselves for success in this uncertain future? I'm going to start with Akosua. Ladies first, Delison. I'm going to start with Akosua, and then I'm going to come to Delison on this question.
Minister, it's interesting that you talk about the uncertainty that we face. And what this pandemic has shown us is we live in uncertain times. This just shone a light on how uncertain it is. And we don't have control. And so one of the first things that you have to tell yourself is, this too shall pass. Because uncertain times, we cannot control the times. What we can control is how we show up and how we adapt. And one of the first things is thinking about how the human spirit is so resilient. we have to keep reminding ourselves that people have passed through pandemics before, and here we are. We have to remind ourselves that we want to educate our children. That has to be foremost in our mind. How it happens, we don't know. But we keep the goal in mind that as an educator, we want to educate our children to the best of our ability. As a student, we have to keep singing the mantra, singing the road march, that I will be educated. I will have my education, and it may not look the same way as our parents looked. You know, I mean, we're doing Zoom classes. We didn't have that before. So it's really one of the things that I would say, apart from the journaling, is feeling all of those feelings of frustration. Don't hide them. Don't stuff them down and pretend with toxic positivity. You're feeling bad, I am feeling this way. So get it out of your system. Whether you have to burn it in the fire or whatever you have to do.
Practice that one.
It works, trust me. Get those feelings out. Don't live there, but feel those feelings and get them out. The other thing is, in your toolkit, you must have things that you like to do. Do you like music? Listening to music, playing music, singing. You have to put together a toolkit for yourself because you are responsible for yourself. Whether or not other people come and make you feel good, but at the end of the day, you are responsible. So what's in your toolkit? Is it a playlist? Is it art? Is it writing? Is it drawing? What's in your toolkit that you can draw on when you acknowledge how you feel and get that feeling out? So journaling, mantra, putting together your toolkit, and having a support system that you can rely on. Resting. And resting doesn't just mean sleeping, being still, taking 5 minutes. I know some parents have children, they can't even go to the toilet, they're banging on the door. But find 5 minutes for yourself to just get still. And, you know, it's a practice. Every day, you may not use the same tool in the toolkit, but you have this toolkit here. Every day you pull something out that would support you getting out of bed and doing something. But it's really, really important to acknowledge how you feel and to accept that I cannot control these things around me. What I can control is how I show up and what I use from the toolkit to show up with.
Okay. So feel your feelings, acknowledge those feelings.
Yes.
Right? Be still for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, think about exactly how you feel. Don't live there. Once you've acknowledged those feelings, think about your goal and keep repeating that goal like a mantra and develop your toolkit of the things that make you feel happy. Delison, what do you advise students to do in this time of uncertainty?
First I want to echo, Minister, your sentiments, both of your sentiments. When you spoke about, we live in an uncertain time. I think the last 2 years have shown us very clearly how uncertain time is, and a lot of people want to pivot, they need to pivot, but they're really afraid to pivot. So what I share with my clients, and permit me to share it here, is that the last 2 years have shown us that it's okay for us to invest in self. Not to become selfish, but to invest in self to the point where, it's simple as 3 divisions. Self-talk, which we spoke about before, where you challenge the beliefs that you have and you challenge the thoughts that are in your mind. So that is self-talk, challenging those things and finding what is truthful and what is not truthful and what you might need to discard or burn, as Apostle said. And then the other element is now self-care, being very intentional about self-care. I think, especially when it comes to an educational setting, when it comes to curricula and so on, everything is time-based, and there's a calendar here, and there's syllabi, and there are things that we need to do. But in that time, while we prioritize the calendar, we also need to prioritize taking a break. And sometimes taking a break means stepping away from your device. Taking a break means changing your activity. Taking a break means honing one of those skills, as Apostle said. If you like music, if you like sport, as much as possible within the confines of the protocols, like do what you can do to really recreate. That's what recreation is. You recreate yourself in some fashion. And the last one is definitely self-control. I mean, yes, time is uncertain. And I've come to learn that time is a non-renewable asset. We can't get it back. We could only measure it and use it wisely. But the thing about time is when we attach, we make a connection with the things that we want to achieve, and we establish a time, like a time-based goal, a target that we want to achieve, this thing in this time, then we see the importance of time management. I remember my days as a student, the way I got through my traditional educational journey was I always looked at the markers. So I told myself, okay, for these 2 years, CXC is what is important. And then for these 2 years, A levels is what is important. So I always kept the calendar in my mind so that even though this is the biggest thing in the present, I kept it in my mind that this is not the only thing in my life. After this time, I can continue living my life in a different way. So just being intentional about how you manage your time, and being brave enough to use some of that time to just do nothing. Sometimes doing nothing is so therapeutic. You just disconnect from devices and you just find a space where you can meditate or just relax and not feel as though you are pressured or challenged to do anything. And when you allow yourself to recreate in that space, then you can come back and challenge or target those goals that you really wanted to achieve.
So recreation, recreation, taking time to do that.
Recreation.
And I think that's a recurring theme, because Akoso also spoke to, doing things outside of just one thing, have a kind of broad spectrum. And in this time of COVID, it has to be intentional. Dallison spoke about the intention, because the things you're accustomed to, you may not be able to do those things. So what are the other things? And what are you good at? What makes you happy? What brings you joy? Looking at those things, setting those time markers, to say, okay, this is for the next 2 years. This too shall pass, as Gustav said. 2 years, and it's going to come to an end. And then we have another goal setting. So I think what we're seeing is really an intentional look at yourself, an intentional look at your life. And even as a student, this is something that some of us can do. And as a parent or an educator, it's something that we can assist our children with doing, even as we do it for ourselves, so that they learn that this is a way of coping with stress, because this pandemic has been stressful, and sometimes you overlook it. And, sometimes these types of conversations and discussions about self-care and self-discovery, some people say that's just abstract, it's nonsense, you just pick up yourself and you just dust off yourself and you just move on. And, it's not really taken with the type of seriousness. But I want to say that there's a whole school social worker department, a whole guidance counselor department under the school student support services division of the ministry that is staffed with hundreds of persons. And one of the current crises is that we don't have enough persons. And these are persons deployed in our schools to ensure that these types of matters are seen to. Because what we have seen clearly, even before the pandemic, is that if students are not well prepared in their mind to learn, then teaching and learning becomes so difficult and sometimes even impossible. And when students' minds are not receptive to what is being given to them because they have other concerns, then we can almost not teach them. So I just want to re-emphasize that traditionally, these matters of mental health and these matters of dealing with stress and adapting and positioning for success in difficult times, whereas these may have been pushed to the side before, I think COVID has brought these things really brought us head on to these challenges. And it's really important. So if you're now joining us in this MOE conversation, we're really speaking about adapting and positioning ourselves for success in an uncertain future. And our education system really has been uncertain, and everything has been uncertain in this time, and we're heading into 3 years of it. And you know what's also uncertain? How much longer we are going to have to deal with this. So that's why I say new normal. I don't know if it's new normal anymore. It's probably just normal at this point in time. So I want to ask Kuswa and Ellison to give us some final words. I mean, we're speaking to our students, we're speaking to our educators, we're speaking to parents, we're speaking to administrators, principals who have to set up systems, we're speaking to the staff of the Ministry of Education who has to now adapt and change. You know, this is a kind of change management on the human side. Yeah. So just give us, you know, your last wrap-up comments. What would you say specifically to our students, you know, about this adapting and positioning yourself for this uncertain future? Let's take Ellison and then we reverse, and we are all equal, all inclusive persons here, right? So Ellison.
All right, so in conclusion, you know, speaking to everybody, I want to encourage everybody to see that our present, you know, the present is based on skills and the future is based on technology. I mean, we might say that technology is driving us. No, I mean, I'm speaking to you all through a device, right? So we have technology operating now, but we see as we continue on this trajectory, things are becoming more technological. And we see that skills are becoming more important, soft skills and just skills, what you are able to do. And while there's a place for traditional education, you know, I want to challenge all of us to explore progressive education and, you know, non-traditional education, in looking at traits, looking at things outside of the academics to see where we can encourage our children to find their purpose in that. Time, as we said, time is not promised to anybody. It's non-renewable. All we can do is use what we have been given and use what we have in this moment. So work in the present, but keep the future in mind. And really, I want to say that feelings are your friends. Your feelings are your friends. Don't run away from them. As Apostle said, feel the feelings. But I just want to remind you that your feelings are indicators and should never be dictators. So don't let your feelings tell you what you should and shouldn't do. Let them just make you aware of what you're feeling in the moment so that you can find the help to come up, to overcome that obstacle, and to just really be successful in what you are presently endeavoring in.
Thank you so much, Ellison. Feelings are indicators. Don't let them be dictators. I'm taking that away. And Kuswa, can you give us your last words?
Yeah, I want to just remind everybody again that this is a new time and it's different, and things that we knew from before is gone. So we have to take the time to grieve that loss and not feel guilty about it. And that's where the feelings come in. We have to feel the feeling of the grief that has passed. We're in a situation now where we cannot go back to where we were before for many, many things. And we have to acknowledge that. The second thing is to not feel guilty for feeling those feelings, taking the time out to self-care and to do things differently. We have to really let ourselves off the hook, because once we start feeling guilty about the grief and what has passed, we will start punishing ourselves by self-destruction and not being motivated to do what we have to do. All of those feelings will be trapped inside our body and we would react in a certain way. We have to remember how resilient we are. These things are gone, but we have the ability to adapt. We have the ability to be resilient. We have the ability to change as we move along. We also know that if we go back, we can't recreate that. Mm-hmm. We have to move forward and take some time to set your goals and who do you want to be in this new time? Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up given all this uncertainty? How do I want to show up in the world with this new type of education, with this new type of way to educate? How do I want to show up? And be patient. We have to be patient with this new time, patient with our students, patient with our educators, patient with everything around us, because it's not a quick fix. This is 3 years. I thought, after a few months, we're back to normal, but here we are 3 years later. So we have to be patient with ourselves and patient with everyone around us as we make our mistakes and we do things that may not work for the first time. We may feel frustrated. Be patient and rest. Rest from the things that cause you the stress. Rest, just rest. Just rest and always remember to dip into your toolkit when you start feeling that stress.
Okay. I want to thank Akuswa Darden Edwards and Elson Charles for being with us and for sharing so much of the tips and tricks of how to adapt and position yourself for an uncertain future. And I hope that our parents, our students, our administrators, our teachers have a chance to follow some of these things. Make your toolkit, journal, understand and feel your feelings, but don't stay there. Move on, because they are indicators, not dictators. And we are all thriving in this world. That's what we have to tell ourselves. We are all going to thrive regardless of the uncertainty. We will keep our goals before us, and we will ensure that though we feel the feelings, we will not live there. This has been MOE Conversations, and I'm Dr. Nyan Gadsby-Dolly, Minister of Education. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to you joining us for another episode of MOE Conversations.